right. Let's dive into these language learning sources you sent over.
Sounds good.
I have a feeling this is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah.
It seems like something a lot of our listeners struggle with, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like we've all hit that wall where,
Mhm.
we do all the traditional stuff like the grammar, the vocab lists,
Right.
and it just doesn't translate to
Yeah.
actually being able to
It's
speak the language, right?
It's like the classic struggle. You can ace a grammar test, but then someone asks you, how are you or something, and you're like,
Yeah, totally.
I don't know what to say.
So we've got two sources here that offer some potential solutions.
Okay.
So the first one is this YouTube interview with Alexander Argel,
Okay.
and he's a language professor who's learned over 50 languages,
Wow.
which is pretty mind-blowing in itself.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And he has some pretty unconventional approaches, I would say.
Oh.
And then the second source is this article. It's kind of a deep dive into the direct method, which is this technique that's over 100 years old, but it's having kind of a resurgence in popularity.
Interesting. So we've got old and new here.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how both of those kind of point to the limitations of,
Right.
the traditional ways of learning languages, even though they're coming at it from totally different angles.
Yeah, totally.
Argel, in the interview, he talks about how he spent 7 years studying French
Wow.
in like a traditional classroom setting
Okay.
and barely spoke it.
7 years.
Yeah.
That's
That's a long time.
a pretty compelling argument to not
Right.
stick with the textbooks.
Yeah. And then the article goes into how the grammar translation method, it might help you with understanding the structure,
Yeah.
but it doesn't actually equip you to use it in
Yeah.
a real conversation.
Yeah.
It's like learning music theory but never playing an instrument.
Totally. Yeah, it's all theoretical.
Exactly.
Okay, so then you've got the direct method coming in. And this is basically like flipping the script, right?
Okay.
So instead of like dissecting the language, you're immersed in it
Got it.
from day one.
Okay.
So classes are entirely in the target language.
Wow.
You learn vocabulary by like associating it directly with objects and actions. And there's a huge emphasis on just speaking, like from the get-go.
So it's a really hands-on approach.
Very hands-on.
Interesting.
Yeah, very different from what most of us are probably used to.
For sure.
Now, our goal, he takes a very different approach. It's very self-directed.
Okay.
He's really big on creating these systematic habits.
Yeah.
And he advocates for, just dedicating 15 minutes a day to a language.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which I think is a really key takeaway here, right? It's consistency over intensity.
Absolutely. Because I think a lot of people fall into that trap of,
Yes.
they got to do hours and hours or it's not worth it.
Yeah, totally.
And then they burn out.
Right.
It's like, no, if you can just do even 15 minutes every day, that's going to be way more effective.
Yeah, because it's sustainable.
Exactly.
So what are some ways that he suggests structuring those 15 minutes?
Well, he's got a few techniques, but one that stood out to me was shadowing.
Okay, I've heard of that. Isn't that where you talk along with a recording?
Exactly. So you listen to a recording and you're basically trying to speak along with it at the same time, mimicking their pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm, everything.
That sounds kind of intimidating.
It can be at first, but it's really effective.
Okay.
And he describes it as like having a conversation partner in your ear.
Oh, interesting.
Just so you're getting that instant feedback. And it can really help with pronunciation.
Yeah.
Internalizing grammar, even just getting a feel for the natural flow.
Right, like the musicality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he connects it to the oral tradition.
Okay.
You know how most literature was originally meant to be heard, not just read silently?
Right.
So it's almost like shadowing is a way to reconnect with that.
That's a really good point.
Like the inherent music of language, which I think is really fascinating.
I like that a lot. Okay, so shadowing. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
But something else he emphasizes, and this is a big one, is deep work.
Okay.
Like really focused, distraction-free learning.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He actually goes so far as to disconnect from the internet entirely.
Wow, hardcore.
When he's studying. So it's about creating those conditions for really deep concentration.
And we're so bombarded with distractions these days.
Constantly.
It's hard to focus.
Yeah.
It's like you said, creating those boundaries so you can really get into that flow state.
Yeah, and he even sets up dedicated spaces.
Oh, wow.
for different activities. So like his writing space
Right.
is separate from his recording space. So I think it's about like sending a signal to your brain, like this is
Right.
where the magic happens.
Yeah, like you're stepping into a different zone.
Totally, yeah.
I like that a lot. It makes you wonder, how much are we like unintentionally sabotaging our learning
Oh, yeah.
by trying to multitask
For sure.
with our phones and our notifications and everything?
All the things, yeah.
It's so hard to focus these days.
Right, and I think that ties into this larger theme that we're seeing in both of these sources, which is like taking ownership of your learning,
Absolutely.
right? Whether it's through like creating your own materials
Yeah.
or choosing a method that resonates with you,
Right.
or even designing your learning environment. It's about becoming an active participant,
Yeah.
not just a passive consumer of information.
For sure. And I think that's so important, especially now
Yes.
with all the resources we have available.
Right, like in the digital age,
But it's easy to get overwhelmed
so overwhelming.
and not really know what to do with it all. So it's like taking that agency
Yes.
and figuring out what works for you.
Totally. And Argels actually takes this idea of self-directed learning even further.
Okay. How so?
He even talks about like a spiritual side of language learning.
Oh, interesting.
He incorporates Latin hymns into his prayer and meditation practice.
Wow. Okay.
So he really sees language as a way to like expand your consciousness and connect with other cultures on a deeper level.
Yeah, like you're tapping into something beyond just the words themselves.
Right. It's like,
It's a different way of thinking.
yeah, it's a different way of thinking, of seeing the world.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And another thing both sources are big on is reading aloud,
Oh.
especially for languages where you might not have a lot of opportunities to speak.
That makes sense.
And Argels ties this back to the oral tradition, like we were talking about with shadowing.
Yeah.
Like how reading aloud really brings the language to life in a way that silent reading just can't.
Yeah, you're engaging with it on a different level. Totally.
Yeah. And from a more practical perspective, it helps with pronunciation. It forces you to actually engage with the grammar
Yeah.
and, you know, internalize those structures.
Yeah.
And it helps with the rhythm and the flow of the language.
So it's like hitting multiple birds with one stone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, now there's this ongoing debate in the language learning community
Oh, I bet.
about whether it's better to immerse yourself passively
Mm-hmm.
or to start speaking right away.
Yeah.
And Argels is firmly in the speak from day one camp.
Oh, interesting.
He actually compares the discomfort of speaking a new language
Yeah.
to a baby learning to walk.
Oh, okay.
Like they stumble and fall, but eventually they get it.
They get there.
And he thinks we should use things like shadowing to overcome that hesitation.
Yeah, to kind of jump in head first.
Yeah, and he even challenges the traditional approach to learning ancient languages.
Oh, wow.
He says we should treat them like living languages
So, like, speaking Latin,
in everyday conversations.
that's pretty radical.
It is, yeah.
But I kind of love it.
Me too. It's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah. And then for Arabic,
Yeah.
which has that really
Complex.
dialect situation,
Yeah.
he recommends starting with modern standard Arabic
Okay.
to build a strong foundation and then branching out
Got it.
to specific dialects as needed.
So it's kind of like mastering the core
Exactly.
and then exploring the variations.
Yeah. And he says, don't worry about sounding unnatural
Okay.
if you speak modern standard Arabic because, you know, he's lived in Lebanon and Dubai. So he's got experience with this.
Yeah, he's walking the walk.
He's walking the walk.
Not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
So I think what's so inspiring about Argaust is that he created his own language learning path, like out of frustration with the limitations of traditional methods.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to break the mold.
No, he was like, this isn't working for me. I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah, and he succeeded.
And he succeeded, yeah.
That's so cool.
So it's a powerful reminder that we have that power, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we don't have to wait for the perfect course or the perfect circumstance.
We can create our own path.
Yeah, we can just get started.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But I'm really curious to hear, like, what's resonating with you so far?
Well, for me, I think the shadowing technique.
Okay.
It's really intriguing. It seems like it could be really effective, especially for improving pronunciation and fluency, especially for those of us who don't have regular access to native speakers.
Right.
And I also appreciate his emphasis on the deep work.
Yeah.
And disconnecting from distractions. I think that's something we could all benefit from.
Totally.
Not just in language learning, but just in life in general.
I totally agree. And for me, It's this idea of creating your own language learning academy. Like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Right.
It could just be like a corner of your room or a designated time slot in your day.
Yeah.
But it's about taking ownership of the process.
Yeah, and making it a regular part of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
But before we get too carried away, we still have a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't even touched on the multisensory approach. Yeah. Or creating your own materials.
Right.
And I think it's important to delve into the why behind it all, too.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Exactly. What are the benefits? So we'll explore all of that and more when we continue our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Picking up where we left off before the break, I'm really curious about this multisensory approach to language learning.
Right.
It's not something I've really come across before.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, how could we engage more senses than just sight and sound?
Right.
Like, what about smell, touch, even taste?
Okay.
Can we bring those into the mix somehow?
But, like, imagine instead of just reading the word for lavender in French, you actually smell lavender while you're repeating the word.
Right?
Would that create, like, a stronger memory?
Yeah, like a deeper sensory connection?
Yeah.
I love that. And what about touch?
Yeah.
Like, could you incorporate that by, I don't know, like handling traditional crafts or cooking a meal from the target culture?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Make it feel more tangible.
Yeah, so instead of just learning the vocabulary for kitchen utensils, you're actually using them.
Yeah.
You're feeling them.
Yeah.
You're understanding how they're used in that culture.
It's a whole other level of immersion.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just hearing and seeing. You're experiencing it.
You're really experiencing it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any research on like how effective that is.
I know. I'd be so curious to see that actually makes a difference.
You could do a study, right?
Yeah.
Like compare learners who are using multisensory techniques versus the traditional like textbook approach.
Oh, see, now we're going off on all these tangents.
Oh, I know, I get excited.
Which I love.
It's a fascinating topic.
But let's bring it back to the sources for a second.
Okay, sounds good.
Because there's this one point we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
And it really ties into this whole taking ownership thing.
Okay.
Argylis was talking about how he made his own interlinear texts for Persian.
Oh, wow.
So he basically like wrote the translations between the lines.
That's impressive.
Of the original text.
So, wow, he's really taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Right. So he's not just passively consuming information.
Right.
He's like creating the tools that he needs.
To deepen his understanding.
To deepen his understanding, yeah.
I like that.
And it made me think about how the direct method really emphasizes active learning. You know, you're not just memorizing verb conjugations.
Right.
You're actually using the language.
Even if it's messy.
Even if it's imperfect.
Yeah. You got to get your hands dirty.
You got to get your hands dirty.
That's how you learn.
Yeah. And I think both of those examples just highlight the importance of personalizing your approach.
Totally.
Right. Like there's no one-size-fits-all method.
Argylis even says different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, exactly. Like what works for one person
might not work for another.
Might not work for another. And the article talked about how that professor, Dr. Vance, who's reviving the direct method, she really adapts her teaching to each individual student.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Right. Because some people thrive in that fully immersive environment.
Yeah.
But other people need more structure.
Right.
Or like explicit grammar instruction.
Yeah, you got to find what works for you.
So it's really about finding what resonates with you. Whether it's a specific technique or a learning environment, or even the types of materials you use.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to experiment.
Oh, for sure.
Try different things.
Yeah.
See what clicks.
Absolutely. And it made me think about you, actually.
Oh, okay.
You're clearly passionate about languages.
Yeah, I love it.
Like, what are some of your goals and what techniques have you found helpful?
Well, I'm always trying to improve my fluency in the languages I already know.
Yeah.
But I also love exploring new ones.
Okay.
And one technique that's been really helpful for me is spaced repetition.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, so it's based on the idea that we forget information over time, but we can strengthen our memory by reviewing that information at increasing intervals.
So you're not just like cramming vocabulary.
Exactly.
And then forgetting it.
Yeah, it's more strategic.
Yeah.
You're spacing out the review sessions to maximize retention.
I like that.
And there are even apps that can help you with that.
Oh, cool.
They use algorithms to schedule the reviews.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So it's playing into how our brains actually work.
Right.
with forgetting and remembering.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Because it seems like it ties in really well with what Argels was saying about consistency and building those habits.
Absolutely. It's those small, regular efforts that make a big difference over time.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly, and neither is fluency.
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
For sure.
And I think that's where this idea of finding joy in the process comes in.
Totally.
Because if it feels like a chore,
yeah,
you're not going to stick with it.
You're going to burn out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's got to be something you enjoy.
And I think both of our sources really emphasize that. That sense of joy, that sense of discovery, like expanding your horizons and connecting with other cultures.
Yeah. It should be an adventure.
It should be an adventure, yeah.
Not a chore.
But I think before we jump into the why, which you so wisely brought up earlier, we should talk about the practicalities a bit.
Okay.
Because we've been talking about these kind of high-level concepts.
Yeah.
But what about the nitty-gritty details that can really make or break success?
Like finding the right resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think in this digital age, we're just bombarded with options.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right.
There are so many apps and websites and podcasts.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. How do you even know where to start?
Right, and I think it starts with being clear about your goals.
Okay.
What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
Are you aiming for conversational fluency? Reading comprehension?
Right.
Something else?
Yeah, because if you just want to dabble and have some fun,
right.
like an app like Duolingo might be a good starting point.
Right.
But if you're serious about reaching fluency, you might need to invest in something more comprehensive.
Right, like textbooks or online courses.
Yeah, or even a tutor.
And I think it's also crucial to find resources that align with your learning style.
Oh, absolutely.
Because some people really thrive with a structured, grammar-based approach.
Yeah.
And others prefer a more immersive, intuitive experience.
Totally. So don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Try different things. See what clicks for you.
And don't underestimate the power of free resources.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's so much out there.
Yeah, tons of great podcasts and YouTube channels and websites.
And a lot of libraries offer
that's right.
free access to language learning software.
I forgot about that.
So there's really no excuse not to start.
I know. There's something for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, no matter your budget or learning style.
But I think it's important to remember that resources are just tools.
Yeah.
They can be helpful.
Yeah.
But they're not magic bullets.
Right. You still got to put in the work.
You still have to put in the time and effort.
Yeah. Motivation and discipline are key.
Yes.
You could have all the best resources in the world, but if you're not committed, you're not going to get anywhere.
You're not going to see results.
Exactly.
And speaking of mindset,
I
think that's such a crucial aspect of language learning.
For sure.
That often gets overlooked.
Totally. Our beliefs and attitudes can make a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Like if you believe you're bad at languages.
Right.
Or it's too late to learn, you're basically setting yourself up for failure.
Totally.
You're putting up those mental roadblocks.
And that's where Argel's story is so inspiring.
Yeah.
Because he didn't let those limiting beliefs hold him back.
No, he believed he could do it.
Yeah.
And he proved it.
And he proved it.
That's amazing.
So it's really about having that growth mindset.
Yeah, that willingness to embrace the challenge.
Yeah, and to celebrate those small wins along the way.
For sure. Don't get discouraged by mistakes.
Right, because they're inevitable.
They're part of the process.
They're part of the process.
It's like learning to ride a bike.
Exactly.
You're going to fall a few times.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll get it.
You'll get there.
And that feeling of accomplishment.
Oh, yeah.
When you can finally have a conversation.
Yes.
Or read a book.
It's amazing.
It's so rewarding.
It's the best feeling.
Yeah.
So how do we cultivate that positive mindset?
Well, I think it's important to set realistic goals.
Okay.
Don't try to do too much too soon.
Right.
Start with small, achievable steps and gradually increase the challenge.
Yeah, if you set the bar too high,
right,
you're just setting yourself up for disappointment.
It's like training for a marathon.
Exactly.
You don't start by running 26 miles on day one.
Right. You start small.
You gradually build up your endurance.
And celebrate those milestones.
Celebrate those milestones. Exactly.
They find ways to make it fun.
Yeah. If you're not enjoying it,
yeah,
you're not going to stick with it.
You're not going to stick with it.
So find what you enjoy.
Yeah. And I think that's where that multi-sensory approach could be so powerful.
Find ways to connect language learning to your other interests.
Yes.
Whether it's music or cooking or art, whatever you're passionate about.
And don't underestimate the power of community and support.
Oh, that's so important.
Right.
Yeah, connect with other language learners.
Yeah.
Share tips, encourage each other.
Yeah, it makes such a difference.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders cheering you on.
Yeah.
And it reminds you that you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone in this.
There are so many people out there.
Yeah.
Learning languages.
And facing the same challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah, and celebrating the same triumphs.
It's about tapping into that shared passion.
Yeah.
And lifting each other up.
Totally.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about the how.
Yeah.
I think it's time to talk about the why.
Come on, let's do it.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah, why are you learning languages?
What's driving your passion?
Yeah, for me, it's about expanding my worldview.
Okay.
Connecting with other cultures. Challenging myself intellectually.
Yeah.
It's like stepping outside of my own little bubble.
Yeah.
And experiencing the world through a new lens.
I love that. And I think for a lot of people,
yeah,
it's about that feeling of connection, that ability to communicate with people from different backgrounds.
Understand their story.
Understand their stories.
Appreciate their perspectives.
Yeah, and it can foster empathy and understanding.
Absolutely.
In a way that few other things can.
Yeah, and in a world that's becoming increasingly interconnected, this kind of cross-cultural understanding is so valuable.
It's so valuable. It opens doors.
Yeah.
In business, diplomacy, travel, tourism.
It's like a key that unlocks all these new possibilities.
And let's not forget the economic benefits.
Right.
Like in a globalized marketplace, businesses need employees who can communicate across cultures.
Absolutely. It's becoming more and more essential.
It's not just a nice to have on your resume anymore.
Yeah, it's often a requirement.
And it's not just about fluency.
Right.
It's about cultural competency.
Yeah, understanding the nuances.
It's how people interact.
It's a whole other level of communication.
So it's really about developing a global mindset.
Totally.
Becoming a citizen of the world.
Yeah, being able to engage with people.
Yeah.
From all different backgrounds.
I love that. And I think on a societal level, when we value linguistic diversity, we create a more inclusive and equitable world.
Absolutely. It sends a message that every voice matters.
Yes.
That every language and culture has something to offer.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
I
want to leave our listener with a call to action.
I like that.
What do you think?
Sounds good.
Don't wait another day.
Yeah.
Embrace the power of language learning.
Just get started.
Don't let fear or those limiting beliefs hold you back.
Yeah. Take that first step.
Start small if you need to.
Download an app, pick up a phrase book.
Yeah.
Find a language partner online.
Yeah, anything.
Just do something.
Or just get started.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Enjoy the process.
Celebrate those small wins.
And never stop exploring.
And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll all be fluent in multiple languages.
I hope so.
Connecting with each other effortlessly.
Building a more harmonious world.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is a beautiful vision.
And it all starts with us.
With us.
Taking that first step.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
Into the world of language learning.
My pleasure.
Until next time, happy learning. So we've talked about some really effective techniques for language learning.
Yeah.
And some of the personal rewards. But I think it's time to kind of zoom out a bit.
Okay.
And look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, the societal impact?
Exactly. Like, how does language learning benefit society as a whole?
Well, I think it really has the power to bridge those cultural divides.
Right. When you can communicate directly with someone from a different background, you're more likely to understand them and appreciate their perspective.
It's like you're breaking down those communication barriers.
Totally.
That can lead to
misunderstandings.
Yeah, misunderstandings and conflict.
Exactly.
So the other becomes less foreign, less intimidating.
Yeah, you can start to build genuine connections.
Right.
And share ideas and collaborate.
Yeah, and each language carries with it, like a unique history and culture and a way of seeing the world.
It's like a whole different lens.
Right. So when you're learning a language, you're not just learning words and grammar.
Right.
You're gaining access to a whole new way of thinking.
Yeah, and a new way of understanding the human experience.
And in an increasingly interconnected world, that kind of cross-cultural understanding is so important.
It's more valuable than ever.
It really is.
It opens up so many possibilities. Yeah, in business, diplomacy, international relations.
Travel, tourism, it's essential.
And on a personal level.
Yeah.
It just enriches your life in so many ways.
Totally. You can connect with people from all over the world.
Experience different cultures firsthand.
It's amazing.
Appreciate the diversity of human expression.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And we can't forget about the economic benefits.
Oh, right.
Like in a globalized marketplace?
Yeah.
Businesses need employees who can communicate across cultures.
Absolutely. It's becoming a major asset.
Yeah, it's not just a nice to have anymore.
Right.
It's essential for success.
And it's not just about fluency. Yeah. It's about cultural competency as well.
Understanding those nuances.
Yeah, being able to navigate those differences.
So language learning isn't just about acquiring a skill.
Right.
It's about developing a global mindset.
Totally. Becoming a citizen of the world.
I love that. Capable of engaging with people from all different backgrounds.
Yeah. And appreciating those different perspectives.
And I think on a societal level, when we value linguistic diversity,
yeah,
it creates a more inclusive and equitable world.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it shows that every voice matters.
Every voice matters.
That every language and culture has something to contribute.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of language learning, I want to leave our listener with a call to action.
Okay, I like it.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Embrace the power of language learning.
Don't let fear hold you back.
Start small if you need to.
Yeah.
Download an app, pick up a phrase book, find a language partner online.
Just take that first step.
Take that first step.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a journey.
Enjoy the process.
Celebrate the wins.
Never stop exploring.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll all be fluent in multiple languages.
I hope so.
Connecting effortlessly.
Building a more harmonious world.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is, and it all starts with us.
With each of us taking that first step.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into the world of language learning.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Until next time, happy learning.